Buyer confidence is crucial for product success, and if you're producing products, you must comply with all the laws and the regulations that come with the product that you are developing. So, product restrictions are a complex subject and have many subfields, and embarking on this project of research regulations can be a daunting task. So, before we dive into the deep pool of rules, let's talk about product certification. So, what is product certification and how do I tell if I require it for my product? Because it's pretty complex when you first develop a product to understand if your product actually requires certification or not, because not always or not all products always require certification. Now, product certification certifies that a product fulfills requirements set out in contracts, regulations, or specifications, and it's passed all necessary quality assurance and performance tests. And product certification is usually a requirement of products where the failure of components could bring severe consequences to people, animals, and property. That's including health and safety. Those consequences in the event of a failure can even be fatal, so it's important to get right. Product certification gives the product users the confidence to purchase and use goods. If a product is certified in accordance to applicable national or international laws, customers know that the product should function correctly and not cause harm. But if you violate these requirements in your product, you could end up in pretty hot water with the relevant authorities. You could have a monetary fine at the shallow end, ranging all the way up to product recalls and jail time. So it's a big topic to get correct. So if you are producing a product, what markings would you possibly need for that very product? So I'll give you an example of a component that will probably be within your reach, now at least if you're a non-Mac user anyway. Grab the power block of your charger for your laptop or PC, flip it over, and it'll probably look something similar to, well, this. You've got to agree that's a lot of markings and it has a lot of information on there. Now, within these markings, we have various certification stamps of a number of different markets. As an example, here we have the EAC marking. The Eurasian Conformity marks a certification mark to indicate products that conform to all technical regulations of the Eurasian Customs Union. It means that EAC marked products meet all requirements of the corresponding technical regulations and have passed all the conformity assessment procedures. Now, this EAC marking was originally from the USSR and is applicable for items that require if they are to be sold in Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and other number of other states in the ex-USSR. Now, will you require this marking if you're not selling electrical products into Russia? No, you won't. Hence, some of the markings on your items or on items that you might have around you may not be applicable to the markets that you want to be selling into. It's an important fact. Not all markings are required. However, a more common or more recognizable marking that you see here is the CE mark, and you might need to put one of these on your products. The CE mark stands for Conformité Européenne, French for European Conformity. The CE mark on a product affirms that the manufacturer or the importer complies with the relevant EU legislation, and subsequently the product may be sold anywhere in the EEA. Take note, as this does not now include the UK, as we've now our own UKCA mark. However, for this example, let's keep it simple and stick with the CE mark because at the moment they are very closely connected. The CE marking can be attached to anything by anyone. That's an important thing to remember. You can attach, or anybody can attach a CE mark to anything. That doesn't mean it's legal. Attaching a CE mark to a product that legally should have a CE mark but has not been tested to those certifications is illegal. You can't just slap a CE mark on your product and be done. For example, most electrical products that plug into the wall on a 240 volt must comply with the low voltage directive and the EMC directive. Toys, on the other hand, must comply with the toy safety directive. And I've left a link in the course notes to that toy safety directive. So the CE mark can be applied to different products and mean different things to those different products. It doesn't all mean the same thing. And it's essential to grasp that the marking does not indicate an EEA manufacturer or that the EU or any other authority for that matter has approved the product as safe to use, nor have they approved it as conformant. The critical thing to note in all of this is CE marking confusion is this. Is the responsibility for CE marking lies with whoever puts the product on the market in the EU. For an example, an EU-based manufacturer, the importer or the distributor of a product made outside of the EU, or an EU-based office of a non-EU manufacturer. So what does that mean for my product? First of all, you need to determine if your product falls within the category of requirements for the CE mark. Now, this is the list for the CE mark and items that are required to have the CE mark on it. For example, let's say if we're producing a product that ran on voltage of 240 volts, our product will require a CE marking, as we know that at the very least that it would have to conform to Directive 2014-35-EU, which is one of the directives in the low voltage product groups, and it is as follows. You can pause it to read it. Meaning that the following fall within the directive scope and be required to have a CE marking on the unit. And the description is this. The low voltage directive covers all electrical equipment and components designed for use with a voltage rating of between 50 and 1000 volts for alternating current and between 75 and 1500 volts for direct current. The low voltage directive defines which products fall within its field of application. It provides the essential requirements that electrical equipment and components covered by it must comply with, and it outlines the conformity assessment, the procedure that the manufacturer must apply in order to ensure compliance with the essential requirements, meaning that the following would fall within the scope of the directive and be required to contain the CE marking on the unit. Now, for each directive, the manufacturer or importer, it's important to understand, must perform a conformity assessment, then test the directive specification. Now, this can be self-certified. However, this has to be conducted in a manner that tests the product so that it conforms to those directives. So, an example, say that you've come up with a toy design to apply the CE or UKCA mark to it. You'll need to test the EN71 standards, and again, I've left that link in the course notes. Now, this test can be done in two ways. Now, you can send it to a lab to do it for you, and this can be expensive, especially if you have many designs, or you can self-certify it. Self-certification is where you put your toy through a series of tests yourself to be sure that it fits the regulations. Now, in this category of soft toys, for example, there are 3 categories of testing that it needs to pass to be able to apply that CE mark on it. The first is chemical. All your fabrics and materials need to conform to the chemical testing standard called the EN71-3. There are 18 different heavy metals that need to be tested for and ensuring that they're not contained within your product. As well as testing for the heavy metals, you also need some proof that the materials are safe from other banned substances, and this is covered by REACH, and I'll leave a link to the REACH legislation in the course content as well. The next test is a physical test, and that's around choking. So small parts need to be tested in a cylinder. So to be sure that your toy is up to the intense play it could have, these tests are based on children's ability to destroy it. Firstly, you need to check the length of the cord, loops and toy sizes to check that it's not got any hazards like strangulation or choking risks. Also, physical tests on toys are done by hanging weights from the toys with clamps, manipulating them as a child would and putting into small cylinders to see if they're too small and maybe a choking hazard. For hard part toys, it also means dropping them onto a hard surface, dropping weights on them, twisting them, and tension tests with weights again. Also, it states that your toy needs to be washed and retested and also conduct those same tests again. We also need to check the flammability of it to see how fast a toy burns, as an example, and to be sure that a child has time to drop a burning toy. You would have to burn a toy sample unwashed, then washed, and again you would need evidence and put them into an evidence pack to prove or disprove that it passed. Obviously, all this would either be done in a lab or, again, if you're self-certifying it, Just make sure that you're doing it, if you are testing toys, to be doing it in a windless environment and safely. Now, it would be hard to describe in detail your exact requirements for each individual component, but the main thing to remember when it comes to certification for your products is that if you are importing the product, then you as the importer are responsible to ensure that your product is legal in the area that you're selling it. So regardless of what you're producing or importing, ensure that you're on the right side of certification, as if you're not, then you can be put into some pretty deep water, which you don't want to be doing, especially if this is your first product actually importing into your various areas that you want to sell within. Additionally, Amazon have really clamped down on a lot of these certifications in recent years, and it might be an idea that if you are importing from China, then you ask your supplier to send you this data if they've already done self-certification, and also asked the test labs to validate if the information that you've been provided by your supplier is actually legitimate and it's not forged. Now we've understood what certification might be applicable to your products, we now move on to what we actually do to actually get a design on paper.